Good afternoon, macrobiotic friends. We are at the South River Farm, and what you're looking at now is the rice paddy at South River Farm. This is also the home of South River Miso and its owner, Christian and Gayla Elwell. So we're going to sit down and have a conversation with our good friend Christian, who is here with us today. Morning, Christian. Good afternoon.
Hi, Mark.
And Christian has been farming rice in this area for what, has it been 40 years now? Or am I?
Close to 40
40 years. This is astounding to me. I know that he started out growing it on dry land, correct?
That's right.
And then eventually in 2000, was that about when you went to the paddy?
I'd say more like 2010, around there.
Yeah.
When we went to the paddy.
Okay.
2005, 2010, somewhere in that area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's been a wonderful experience. I had the great good fortune to be around the paddy last year with Christian, helping out in some capacity, and he was very informative. We had great discussions, and we learned a lot about just thinking with each other. For me, a lot, just to think about the spirituality of growing things and of the rice specifically. And Christian has done a great deal of study in this area and has just learned a lot from being here. So we're pleased to be with him today and to just get a little more information about the paddy. I'm going to ask a few questions and encourage Christian to answer or say whatever he'd like to. He has a lot of good information. So we just had a shot of the rice paddy. Christian, how long has it been planted this year, and what stage are we at?
Shall I get around there so you can see it in the
Yeah, we
background?
can just walk over there if you'd like.
Yeah, so this is the rice paddy.
Yep.
It's actually very small.
How small?
It's 35 feet in diameter.
35 feet, yeah.
So it's circular.
Right.
And we plant in that paddy. We plant about there's about 3,500 rice seeds have gone into this paddy. Because we usually plant 2 seeds per spot.
Right.
So there's about let's say 2,000 spots in that paddy. The rows are a foot apart, and the rice in the rows is a hand breadth apart. It was about 8 inches.
And you plant these all yourself?
Usually with help. This year I had good help with it.
Yeah.
It was a difficult planting spring because there was a very cold period there where there were some delays, and we lost some of our seedlings too before planting. So we had to augment the original seedlings with some additional ones later. But you can see the paddy. We can get closer, Mark.
Sure, yeah, let's walk over.
So this 35-foot diameter paddy, that's about 1/13 of an acre.
Right.
And the yield here, we got about between 100 and 120 pounds of rice from this small 1/13 of an acre.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It's equivalent to approaching 5,000 pounds per acre.
Mm-hmm.
So and we're talking about, we're in New England. We're not.
I know, this is unusual, isn't it?
So the rice, you can see here on the perimeter. You can focus in on individual plants.
Yeah.
These on the perimeter actually are from one seed. This is one single plant.
Okay.
But you see in the paddy, there's a little more stalks, and that's the case of where there are two seeds per spot, or two seedlings were put in per spot. But out here in the perimeter, there's just one.
Yeah.
The water is low today because the stream that feeds it is very low right now.
Right, because of the rainfall you were saying, or lack of.
So you can see the individual plants, but you can also see, as you you line up your camera, you can see the rows,
Yeah.
and you can see how they're spotted, as I said before, about 8 inches to a foot apart in the rows.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see how now the leaves are beginning to touch each other.
Right.
So when you look out on the paddy, especially from an angle when you're not looking right down the rows, it's starting to cohere
Yes.
as a total organism of that the paddy takes on.
Yeah.
And that's a significant stage in the life of the rice paddy, where it goes from the individual plants. When we put these in as seedlings, they were only this tall,
I remember last
and
year.
that was in the end of May.
Mm-hmm.
So we're now it's the end of June. That was a month and a half ago.
Mm-hmm.
The seeds actually were first soaked in around the solstice in March. Not the solstice, the spring equinox.
Yeah.
Around March
20th.
March 21st, around that time,
Yeah.
is when we put the seeds into the stream to give them a cold water welcome.
A welcome
to break their dormancy, to
Right.
welcome them to New England.
chilly
Yeah.
New England water.
Chilly New England.
And how long did they soak?
So
Christian?
they stayed in that stream in little soaking bags until it was April 12th, I believe. Let's see, I think it was April 12th. I wrote it down here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was Easter Sunday. We took the seeds out of the stream, and they were then soaked for a couple days at room temperature, and then they really started to sprout. And it was at that stage that we put them into seed flats. And then they were in seed flats until the end of May, and then we transplanted the seedlings here into the paddy. Here in Conway, the frost-free date is generally mid-May, so we can't plant before that time because the rice is not frost tolerant.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to plant it within the frost-free growing season, which here is about from middle May to middle to late September. So at this stage in the rice paddy, the leaves are beginning to touch, and
Yep.
you can imagine that underneath the soil, what we don't see, the roots are also starting to intermingle, so that all of the individual rice plants are beginning to cohere as a single organism. And that's the way rice grows usually in communities. It's not a solitary plant like some tree or like some plants in the garden. It's much more of a communal.
So what's the net effect of that? What's that? Do they have some relationship to each other, and how does that express itself? Could you comment on that?
Well, rice is in the grass family, and as you see, we're standing on a grass lawn,
Mm-hmm.
and that grass has the nature of growing together and growing close together, and it has very narrow leaves, as you see,
Mm-hmm.
as many grasses do, and it does not put out an ornate flower like some of these flowers in the garden over here, for instance. They're, we would say, ornate, and because of their ornate quality, they have horticultural value in the garden. But the grasses, their flowers are not ornate. they're almost inconspicuous.
Pretty plain.
But all of the strength and devotion of the plant goes into the seed, which is fruit and seed are combined as one outcome.
Right.
And so a single plant, you can see here, for instance, these single plants, this one has what will become 4 flowering stalks.
Right.
This one here, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 flowering stalks. Each of those stalks is going to put out a panicle. It's called botanically, but it's a stalk with seeds or with flowers on it, and it's about between 125 and 150 flowers
Wow.
per stalk.
Wow.
So each plant can easily put out between 500 and 1,000 seeds from one seed. And if we go over, we look around, the rice in the plants that we first planted out. Let's go a little further.
Yes. Yeah, you had something to show me before. You're gonna.
Yeah, so let's take this plant for instance. Now this is a single plant. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It has 9 stalks. But you see this main, I call it leader stalk,
Right.
because among all of these stalks, this one is the furthest developed,
Mm-hmm.
furthest along. And if you notice, I hope your camera, the plant, it marks a stage in the life of the plant that is as significant as the caterpillar changing into a butterfly.
That's the appearance of the panicle, then. Is that what?
Sorry?
That's the appearance of the panicle. Is what you're.
Yeah, and it's called the flower emergence.
I see.
The metaphor that I gave with the butterfly is not quite accurate, because it would be more accurate when we talk about the transformation of the flower into the seed for the next generation.
Mm-hmm.
But the emergence of the flower is an outer showing that the plant is going into this new phase in its life cycle.
Can we get one more shot of that? Can you show me, just so I can make sure I get it up? So that's the flag leaf right there.
This is
you're
the
bending
flag
it.
leaf,
Yeah.
and then you can see it's going almost, it's going out much more towards a 90-degree angle than this leaf, for
Right.
instance.
Right.
Most of the leaves in the paddy, you can see are going upright. But once you get to aware of the flag leaf, you can see that there's a number of leaves out here that are actually going.
And the panicle's right
angle.
below it there.
The panicle is wrapped up
Wrapped up.
within the sheath of this stalk, and there inside
Mm-hmm.
you see the green. You see,
Yeah.
first of all, what will become the awns,
Yes.
and then the green, little green oval-shaped items in there are what will be the flowers.
And then the seeds eventually.
And those flowers are going to fill up
yes.
after they come out, after this whole thing comes out,
Right.
and they will eventually become the grain of rice
Yeah. Lovely.
that we eat. But right now, all of that is miraculously held within the stalk.
Yeah.
And all of the grains are there in embryonic form. They're all of the organs and all of that they're going to need as flowers and to develop the seed are already contained there.
Mm-hmm.
So if you observe this and and be with it for some time, the question automatically rises. You say, well, how on earth
Yeah,
is this happening? How does this come about?
exactly.
Who designed this?
Right. Who's the
You know.
originator?
And
Yeah.
that we know is divine work.
Yeah.
It's the work of God's. It's miraculous work of what we would say nature,
Yeah.
but it's divine activity. It's not something that human beings have invented or
And what's the function of the
designed.
awns? What's the function of the awns?
Well,
You wanna get to that later?
I think that we should talk about the awns when they're out later in another
Okay.
future.
When do you think they'll be
session.
out? Do you have an idea yet? Or?
These, I would say, if we meet again it's now July 15th. If we meet again around end of July, August 1st, you're going to see
Oh, okay.
a paddy full of emerged flowers, rice flowers.
Oh, great. We'll come back
The
then. for
rice
sure.
will be in flower, and we're going to see something totally new and different than what. Right now, it's in a stage of reaching the end of its vegetative growth stage,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and you could compare that with a human being, the vegetative growth stage. Anywhere from. Certainly the first 7 years of human life are mostly,
Yeah.
but right up until the age of 21, we're growing our bodies.
Right.
And then after that, we're flowering
That's right.
into the,
Ideally.
hopefully, flowering into
Yeah.
adult inspired beings.
How much bigger do the rice plants get, Christian?
They're going to get about this tall, about 4 feet.
Okay.
Once that flower emerges, it's gonna shoot straight up, and its aim is the heavens.
Heavens.
The sun of our solar system, and beyond that, the sun of the whole,
The
the
stars.
center of the cosmos. So its aim is to the stars,
Yeah.
but its roots are in the water and the earth. And it's magnificent to just observe the rice in this way.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, we eat rice a lot on the table. We buy rice in the stores, and we know it as the commodity or the grain that we use, and that is that we have different ways of cooking and preparing it and so forth. But it has come from the earth and the water and the sky, and it's just about to emerge here. So it's wonderful to be able to see the rice in this fashion, because this is the life of the rice, you could say. And the seed, each seed represents, of course, a new life for the plant and a new generation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting because we can compare what I just showed you here with the corn down there in that lower
Oh, yeah.
field.
We'll take
for
a look at
instance.
that. Yeah.
Because I noticed this morning there's one stalk in that field that is just also beginning to send up a tassel. If you want to just compare that.
Yeah. Maybe we can go down there after we finish up here.
Okay.
So about wildlife, we've in the past I've seen wildlife here. Is that something that happens throughout the year, or just at certain times? There was birds and frogs and whatnot, or does it vary?
Well, this year we had there's already a snapping turtle went through the rice soon after we planted it
Oh wow!
and knocked over a lot of the plants. A generation of toads has been born and raised here, and already
Yeah.
hopped off into environment. I think, I don't know if you caught it on camera, but a little earlier there were a couple frogs hopping around. When
I missed them. No,
it
I
may have
wasn't
been on
seeing-
the screen.
Yeah,
Of
maybe.
course, amphibious life is drawn to this. We have the gray tree frog. It's the green frogs that are here now, and the American toad. They all flock to this after we plant the rice and lay their eggs here. Last year that we had a painted turtle in the, it's a smaller turtle in the paddy. Sometimes the blue heron comes.
Mm.
But the water in the garden situation is like a magnet. It attracts all kinds of things. There are the dragonflies
Yes.
and the darning needles, those flying, beautiful flying creatures that also lay their eggs in the water and hatch out during the season.
Yeah. So this will, if all goes well, will be just another good year in the rice paddy. I mean, you don't have too many pests or things that come to eat the rice or anything.
That would
do
be
you?
something good. Also, we talk about when later when we can see the. Well, actually, we're going to finish the series before August.
Yeah,
Yeah, so before middle of August. So
we'll see more.
yeah, later in the season there will be. We're not the only ones who like rice. There are sparrows.
I remember you had sparrows, and we had that big net that you had last
We
year.
have to. This is such a small paddy that a
Yeah.
few birds can do a great deal of damage
Yeah.
in a short order. So we cover this paddy with a netting.
Yeah.
Had to come to that finally.
And that seemed to work.
It works, but on a large scale, it's not something that is practical.
No.
But the Native Americans with their corn, for instance, or even in Asian countries, what they do in the rice fields, they'll have children from the village or out there clacking things together, to
Chasing
scare
away
the birds
the
away.
birds.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. That's what you got to do, I guess.
there's an awful lot. The rice. We take a lot for granted with our modern agriculture because a lot of the work is done by machinery and not a lot of human interaction.
Okay, here's my friend Christian again. We're back on. We're using a different device this time, learning about technology as we go. And that's the interesting discussion we were just having, because a lot of rice is farmed commercially, not the way Christian farms it or some other folks, where it's done certainly for the enjoyment of the people who grow it, but also for the spiritual benefits. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, well, the reason I've grown the rice and other grains too, I have always enjoyed farming and gardening, but I wanted to come into relationship with the plants.
Right.
And there's no better way of coming into relationship with plants than by growing them
That's
and
right.
working with them.
Get your hands in the soil.
Get your hands in the soil and observe and be with the plant through all of its stages of growth and life. So
Yeah.
the plants can be a great teacher to us because the plants, out of their own nature, they are serving the good.
Right.
They don't have this problem of I don't want to serve, or if I'm going to serve, I want this in return, or whatever.
Yeah.
Their gesture is we're serving and we're in obedience or obedience to the laws, the pure laws of nature.
Right.
So they're very pure beings.
Yeah.
They don't have the astrality or the astral negativity that we as human beings experience from our fall from that pure nature. In the Bible, that's called the fall.
Right.
We're dealing with our fallen nature.
Right.
as human beings.
Trying to get back to where we were
And
before
we
it
need to
happened.
reclaim our
Yes.
unfallen nature.
Yes. Yes.
And it's only through our unfallen nature that we're going to get back on track.
Yeah.
Everything that we devise or try to figure out or invent
Mhm.
out of our fallen nature is ultimately destructive.
Right.
And our technology and our ways of thinking, our ways of relating to each other and so forth are very, mostly, for the most part,
So growing rice is a good way to get back to that original
Yeah.
nature, would you
yeah.
say?
Well, growing rice, you come into communion with
Mm-hmm.
the plant as a whole, and the this is seeds from these are rice stalks from
Oh,
last
yeah,
year.
yeah.
So the rice out there,
Yep.
I'll go around so you can have that
Sure.
in the background.
Yeah, yeah.
But the rice out there is going to become
Right. At least that height.
at least that tall.
Mm-hmm.
And this is from more than one plant. This is,
Yeah.
I don't know how many plants this was, but you can see that what we saw furled up inside of the stalk
Yes.
in the embryonic form. Here is the mature, ripened panicle after it has emerged, after the flowers have opened, and they open only briefly,
Mm-hmm.
and after the grain has formed inside each flower. What we saw on the stalks as green is here brown or beige. The awns are still attached.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what that stalk that was furled up inside of that plant. That's what it will become.
Exactly. Yeah, that's beautiful.
And when we take apart these hulls,
Mhm.
inside of each hull is a grain of rice. And I've told the story many times, but you take one single grain of rice,
Yeah, it's a good story.
and you're going to get at least 5 or 6 of these panicles from that one single
Grain.
grain. So the end of the first year, you're going to have between 500 and 1,000 seeds in return for your one.
Mm.
If in the second year you were to plant out, let's say it was the math that I've done around this, I've worked with the number 650. So let's say you take 650 seeds
Right.
at the end of that first year, and you plant them out the second year, you will get about 24 pounds of rice
Wow.
the second year.
Yeah,
Remember, we're
Just from
starting
one-
out with one seed the first year.
exactly.
The third year, if you were to plant those 24 pounds out,
Uh-huh.
if you could,
If you could.
that's a lot of rice
Yeah.
for a man or a woman to plant
Yeah.
the way we're doing it. But with a village, you could do it. But that 24 pounds would plant between 3 to 5 acres,
Wow.
or depending on the spacing you do.
Productive.
And the yield would be about 7 tons
Holy
of
smokes.
rice.
Wow.
So it's a geometrical progression that goes from 1 seed to 24 pounds to 7 tons
Mhm.
in 3 years. And it's from that, I mean, the numbers are just astonishing, so you
Yep.
can hardly, you almost have to stop and take a deep breath
Yeah.
and say, my God, oh my God. But it's from that picture, it's from that fact that the the wonderful expression 1 grain 10,000 grains, that's where that comes from
Okay.
that knowledge
Yeah.
that from one single grain nature returns. In this case,
Abundantly.
it's not 1 grain 10,000, it's 1 grain 7 tons
7 tons.
in 3 years.
Yeah.
So it's
Enough to feed a lot of people.
it's very humbling because again, nature is all about abundance and generosity.
Yes.
It's not about withholding.
Yeah. It's another lesson to be learned, I guess.
That's another lesson.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've always been interested in farming, is that right?
Yes, my father had a vegetable farm on Martha's Vineyard where I was born.
Mm-hmm.
He came back from, after World War II, he came back from England with an armload of organic farming books.
Really?
And he
Yeah.
and my mother started a vegetable farm on Martha's Vineyard back after the war.
Yeah.
After World War II, we're talking about.
Right.
That war.
That war.
But then we moved back to the area where they grew up, which is outside of Boston.
Mm-hmm.
But my father, there were two expressions my father had, which he inscribed in my soul because he said them so often.
Mm-hmm.
One was, "I like to keep my fingers in the soil,"
Yeah.
and the other was, "I'm glad my mother had me."
Yeah.
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 And those seemed, at the time, they seemed like silly kind of expressions. But my God, what a teaching there is in those two.
For sure. My goodness.
Yeah, I'm glad my mother had me,
Yeah.
and I like to keep my fingers in the soil.
Yeah.
That includes everything, actually. You know, the Mother God,
Yeah.
I should say this way, the Father God and the Mother God are
Right.
all there.
Heaven and earth. Yeah.
Yeah.
So have there been other influences in your life?
Excuse me?
Other influences in your life in growing rice? Or did you?
Well, I know growing up that chicken and rice and green beans, which we had every Wednesday night,
Mm-hmm.
that was my favorite meal.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't Lundberg rice, it was Uncle Ben's, I guess, but it was rice.
So you.
And
Mhm.
I enjoyed that very much.
And did you learn from any rice farmers? I know there's some others in New England now. There's others. Who did you learn from? Learn about rice farming.
Yeah, well, as far as I know, I was the first one to grow rice in New England.
Yeah.
There was a Takeshi Akayogi,
Mm-hmm.
who was a market gardener up in Putney, Vermont,
Mm-hmm.
who had lived and worked with Masanobu Fukuoka in Japan.
Right.
He was keen on growing rice and wanted to do that, but with his market gardening and raising his children, he hadn't gotten to that. But for several years, he came down and kept encouraging me with the rice and gave me many tips about
Mm-hmm.
how to go about it, how to harvest it, what tools to use, and so forth.
Right.
And then eventually, when his children left home, he did put in a paddy himself
Oh, okay.
and started growing rice up in Putney. And that was the first time I experienced the rice paddy. I had been growing this rice dry land
Dry land.
until that time.
Yeah.
But when I saw his rice paddy and all of the life that was attracted to the paddy, that really that changed my point of view. And I've learned since that the rice growing in the paddy with a continuous supply of moisture is much more productive than the
Stand up.
dryland rice.
Yeah. So, there's a difference in the quality. You think, in the paddy
That
rice?
I can't speak to really, but it's a difference in the quantity actually.
Mhm.
The rice in the paddy grows, I could say, more productively. It puts out more more rice than the. But I can't say that I ever grew the dryland rice with as much care as I have for the paddy.
Okay.
The dryland rice just would need, at times it needs watering, because any plant benefits from water, of course, so you can't let it dry out. And I used to, with the dryland, I used to plant the rice and say, well, you're going to have to fend for yourself, so to speak. Because at that time I didn't have the time or the connection with the rice that.
The miso company to think about.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, big deal. South River miso is an important product that so many of us enjoy and use. So where did you get your seeds? Or where do you get your seeds now? Well, now you get your seeds.
The seeds from this rice
originally.
I originally got in the early 1980s from Cornell University. An agronomist there by the name of Dr. Peverly. I happened to go to Cornell, so
yep.
That may have given me some in there with the people there, but he very happily sent me some rice. I told him that I'd like to try some rice here, and if he had any varieties that he thought might grow here in New England, and he sent me 2 varieties. One was this one, which the seed they had obtained from Ukraine. Another rice that he sent was a more medium grain rice, which had come from Italy.
Mm-hmm.
Immediately I was attracted to this rice from Ukraine because of the awns.
Oh, okay.
The Italian rice did not have the awns like this. So it was a much more, I would say, at first for aesthetic reasons, it was a much more, I would say, pleasing plant, and much more appealing plant. It seemed more, less doctored up by human interventions. So the rice with the awns, the awned rice is more typical of rice that has not been manipulated much by other than through selection, through generations, by farmers and gardeners and down through the ages.
So getting back to the awns, and I know you were hoping that we would get to see them in a future episode, but I think what I've heard from you last year was that the awns have a special role in terms of creating the rice to be what it is.
Yes, well, if you can imagine, and we'll see when you come back in a couple of weeks, but you will see then when that first comes out of this, when this is called a panicle, when the panicle first emerges from the stalk. Of course, it won't be filled out with grain, but at that time, it will be much lighter, and these individual grains will be they'll be green, empty flowers, so it'll be much lighter, and this whole stalk will be shooting straight up, and the awns will be leading the way, so to speak. They'll be aiming right to the sun, right to the stars. And these awns, if you could rub your hand against them, your fingers, if you go down the awn, they're full of little bristles. It's a very, I would say, electrically charged organ that when you come out in the morning or evening, or at night, the awns will, little droplets of dew will coalesce on the awns.
Mm-hmm.
And so you see little droplets of water coalescing around each awn. And the awn, it's very clear when you see it growing out of the plant, but they're antennae.
Yeah.
The word awn is the botanical name.
Mm-hmm.
But if you were to see it, and if you were to just ask without having any botanical knowledge, what is that?
Right.
Say, well, that looks to me like an antenna, and that's exactly right.
Yeah.
It is the antenna which is communicating cosmic life.
Yeah.
You could say etheric life.
Mm-hmm.
You could say life force. You could say chi. You could say ki.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You could say prana.
So it's attracting the prana or the ki or the chi, you think?
That's all congealing out of the moisture in the air, and that moisture in the air is penetrated and saturated with cosmic light and cosmic life
Mm-hmm.
forces
Mm-hmm.
that come from the starlight, the sunlight, the moonlight, and the radiations from the whole cosmic order, the order of the universe, which we call.
So that just became apparent to you from the years of growing rice, would you say, or
Well,
something you intuitively kind of learned to
it's
be true?
just you might say, and I think you experience this yourself. You just
Mm-hmm.
you come out and you look at the rice, and you're kind of awestruck
Right.
by this is a little
Yes.
hand pictograph of the rice flower,
Yes.
and I regard this almost like an icon.
Mm-hmm.
When I look at this, are you getting it without reflection?
Yeah, we're good.
So if you look into that world there, that's this is the flower it's open, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stamens. The stamens are the male that give off the pollen.
Mm-hmm.
Down here is the pistil, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
These little organs here. Pollen from the stamens falls on the pistil and goes down into the ovule, which is this little organ there.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the seed fills out and develops from that little spot down there.
Yes. It's a beautiful picture.
All of this is, when you contemplate it and just try to imagine how did this all come about and from where, you become, as I was saying earlier, awestruck. And
feels like there's certain intuition that develops just from being around that. I don't know if you feel the same way.
just observing.
Yeah.
Just observing there's no way in our modern time we're so caught up in our own devices.
Yep.
In our own inventions.
Mm-hmm.
And in our own attempts to figure things out and get rich in the process, for instance.
Right.
Whereas nature is growing out of and becoming out of a divine order of wisdom and of being that is far beyond our
Rational mind.
our ability to calculate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Our own bodies come from that same source.
Mm-hmm.
So we're living in that world, but we're separated from that world by the calculations of our heads.
Well, it sounds like you've learned a lot over the last 30, 40 years growing rice. And that's marvelous. What a great experience.
As human beings, that's one of our
Yeah.
tasks.
Yeah.
And it's one of the gifts of life to us as we get older, and if we're open,
Yeah.
and if we listen,
Right.
and if we're humble enough, we learn little things.
We do.
Just from observing.
Isn't that fun?
Yeah.
Speaking of fun, I think you had some more things to show us today. You want to do one
Well,
of those,
it's-
or what do you want to save that for later?
I can show you, I mean, it's just very interesting.
This is at Christian's next to his house here. He has a few items.
So in the United States, we're all very familiar with corn
Yeah.
because a lot of it is grown here, and we eat a lot of sweet corn in the summer and so forth. I mean, Americans do, I'm talking.
Mm-hmm.
But how different corn is from the rice.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll back
And-
up a little
and,
so you get a good shot of comparison there.
The corn plants, we can, if there's time, we can see those.
Yeah.
Or also growing down in that lower field is some rye.
Oh.
This is
wow.
rye harvested last week. It's now, the rye was planted last fall. It goes through the winter.
Does it have awns too?
It does have awns.
Yeah.
You see how different and the rye is similar to, it looks similar to wheat in some ways. But how different it is than
Yeah.
the rice.
Absolutely.
So this is another grain. It has its own special quality in nature. And it's different gesture just in the way it grows
Mm-hmm.
and the way it looks.
Mm-hmm.
It's another one. This one's sorghum.
Sorghum. Yeah.
And this is a millet.
Oh.
It's called a pearl millet.
Okay.
This is not your typical. You can't get this millet in the natural food store.
No.
But this is a millet that is used a lot in Africa.
Oh.
But how different
Yeah.
that is.
Yeah. Comparing the two.
And even among the millets,
Oh, what's this? This
there's
is
another kind of millet.
Oh my goodness! Look at that.
This one is
Woo.
this one originated in China.
Uh-huh.
This is foxtail millet.
Oh, okay.
It's called millet. A lot of the small-seeded, round-seeded grains are called millet, but
Mhm, mhm.
actually, you can see how different this plant is
Oh my goodness! Yeah,
from this one, the pearl millet.
that's right.
But this
Are they all edible?
they're all edible,
Mm-hmm.
and this particular millet, the foxtail millet, this one is called Golden Temple
Ah,
from
nice.
China,
Chinese. Yeah,
and it's a beautiful plant.
yeah, it is lovely.
And the grain has a nuttier flavor and taste than the millet that is usually available in the natural food stores.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
The millet available in the natural food store, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just it's a different kind of millet.
Right, right.
And in a certain way, we are poverty-stricken in our lack of diversity and our lack of understanding, a lack of knowledge of all these different plants
Mm-hmm.
that really came into existence along with us to make the journey with us back to our origin. So the plants, the rice, the millet, the corn, they came here to help us.
They did. Along
And
with- yeah.
we've since, in many ways, taken advantage of them and manipulated them to our more economic purposes and of greed and fear of our own lax and so forth.
Right.
But these plants can bring us back into our wholeness
Yes.
because they're part of our journey.
They are. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's wonderful. I guess we could probably stop now unless there's something else. Is that good
Yeah,
for
sure.
you? Okay, and then we'll pick up again. Hopefully in a couple
Yeah.
weeks we'll get to see the patty again and hear some more from our good friend Christian Elwell. That's all for now. Hello again, friends. This is Mark Leonis. We're here at South River Farm again, and you're looking at the rice paddy. And it's been about a week or 10 days since we last visited with our good friend Christian Elwell, who owns South River Farm. And we're back to see how things have progressed in terms of the rice and the growing of the rice, and see what else Christian has to tell us about things. So I'm just going to swivel over here, and here's our good friend Christian. Morning, Christian.
Good morning, Mark.
How are you doing?
Well, it's 88 degrees today.
It's pretty darn hot here, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it's
In
pretty hot.
the beautiful valley. And things are really beautiful here. There's a lot growing, isn't there?
It's a nice breeze, and
Yeah.
as you see, since you were last here, the rice is into flower.
Yes.
This is called the flower emergence stage in the
Yeah.
biography of the rice. So it's a very important and magnificent time in the life of the rice,
Yes.
and we can go over closer and
Yeah, let's.
get a closer look.
Yeah, you can show us more of what you showed us last time. It's
Okay.
wonderful changes that are going on, and so lucky to be here with you.
You see, in the paddy, there are some sections where it's more advanced in flowering than others.
Yes.
There are reasons for that.
Okay. What are those?
This section right here, were a different type of way that we grew the seedlings. The seedlings were much further behind than the others, which were grown in individual cells in plant cells, but these others were just grown in flats without any cells.
Right.
And they were smaller with less roots, and so they're about in growth and in flower emergence they're about a week behind the rest.
Yeah.
The same for the rice in the front here, you see, which has not yet, this flower emergence has not yet happened here.
Nope.
But you can see, what's a good example? Well, this stem right here, how fat it is right there in that
Yes.
section.
Right.
So the flower that will emerge is all now contained within the sheath of the leaves here.
Right.
And then right behind it, over here, is another plant in which that panicle or flowering head is just coming out of that sheath of the leaf wrapped around it, you see?
Yes.
And here even further emerged here.
Yeah. That's the flag leaf there, right?
This is the flag leaf, these are the awns,
Yep.
and here's another one even more
Oh,
emerged.
yeah,
So you have
yeah.
this stage going from, these steps going from here, where it's not revealed yet,
Mm-hmm.
to here where the flowering stalk is just emerging,
Mm-hmm.
more emerged here, further emerged,
Mm.
and then we go up over here
Oh yeah.
and look at this.
Oh yeah.
The flowering stalk has raised itself above the leaf.
Yes.
The leaf part of the plant is on this stalk, and if you can make it out in the with the camera, all of these, so each of these green pods here is a flower,
Yes.
which will eventually become the container of the rice seed, the container of the individual grain of rice that we eventually may come to eat.
How many seeds form on a head like that?
So on a head like this, There's
Generally.
between 125 and 150 seeds.
Wow.
And you see how, in this case, they're still tight together, more or less.
Yes.
Here, even more tight as it's closer to emergence. And here, just as it's emerging, fully tight. Here, it's more like the baby's just coming out of the womb.
Mm-hmm.
It's all tight together. Everything that the plant needs, this flowering stalk, is already here in this stalk here.
Mm-hmm.
Although we can't see it, but it's all there in embryonic form. You could say in the womb condition.
Exactly.
So it's a glorious picture we see here going from, in these stages of development here.
Yeah, and it looks like most of the plants are showing seed heads. Is that accurate? Would you say the majority of them at this point?
Well, this is the part of the patty here that we planted first.
Okay.
So the first days, the planting of the patty took place over 7 or 8 days.
Yeah.
And the first row was right here.
Yes.
And so the most advanced plants are right in this section here.
Mm-hmm.
This section here is behind because the water that comes into the patty enters the patty here.
I see.
And the water is cooler here. As it spreads out into the rest of the patty, it's warmer, and the plants grow that much faster and more vigorously due to the warm temperature.
They like warm water.
Yeah. Now last week we were looking at one particular plant on the other side of
We
the
were.
patty. I'd like to return
Yeah,
there.
let's go over there. Yeah.
This is watercress here growing
Oh, look at
on the
that.
other side of the patty, which was intentional. I planted it here.
Is that to eat, I assume?
Yeah, eat that.
Lovely. Walking around to the other side of the patty where we were last week. And Christian will show us.
So it's becoming more difficult to know which plant we were looking at last week.
Yeah, yeah. They all look.
But I marked one of these plants right here,
Oh, yeah.
which was this plant was the second one for the flower to emerge.
Okay.
There's a plant in there further in that was the first one.
Okay.
But you can see still that all of these heads are still more or less vertical in their orientation.
Right.
They're still shooting up
Yes.
out of the vegetative stem and leaf growth of the plant, and they're shooting up as far as they can reach towards the heavens, towards the sun, the planetary spheres, and towards the stars.
Yeah.
The flowers
Mm-hmm.
are closed. These individual flowers, for instance, right here above my thumb, there are 4 flowers.
Yeah.
They're closed. In the life of the plant, they open for a very brief time,
Mm-hmm.
maybe an hour at most. It depends on the atmosphere and the weather. Right now, with this heat and the sun, I'm looking around. I don't see any that are open. But if we had been here earlier this morning, we would have seen some of them probably open when the air was more moist
Mm-hmm.
and let's say not as severe. But now they're closed. These little light-colored objects here, those are the male parts of the flower, the stamens which have spilled out of the rice flower when it opened.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that they're appearing here indicates that those flowers have already opened.
Oh, okay.
But in rice, the fertilization of the female organs takes place within the seed itself. It's not like, for instance, with corn, you have tassels which have the male pollen up at the top of the plant, and you have the female ears down on the stalk. The female ears have those silks coming out, each silk connected with an individual grain. And the pollen is carried by the wind and other forces of nature, and the pollen then lands on the silk and inseminates the ovary, which develops into the individual seed of the corn. It's not so with the rice. This is not wind pollinated.
No.
The pollination takes place within the flower itself, for the most part.
And you talk about the corn silk. Is that similar to the awns, or is that different?
No, the corn silk would be similar to the stamens,
Oh, okay.
which are these little, these are the remnants of these little white flecks that have spilled out of the flower. The awns.
Yeah, say more about what you think's happening with the awns.
You can see the awns now. I don't know how they're going to show up in your camera, but they're.
We can see them.
It's kind of a
Breeze is blowing now. It's marvelous.
to natural vision as we look at it here. There's a bit of almost a purplish cast.
Yeah.
They're beige colored and they're shiny.
Yeah.
But there's a slight purplish cast about it, and the awns they're alive right now. Later, when you see the awns on a stalk of harvested grain, the awns are no longer alive. They're just the outer remains. But here they're alive, and they're, especially at night and in the morning when they're reaching up into the atmosphere, droplets of dew or water will congeal out of the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And a lot of those droplets will congeal on the awns. The awns are not just simple smooth spines. They have a vast number of little stiff hairs, which are almost like a magnet for drawing that water out of the atmosphere. Now, the atmosphere, as we know, the air is filled with the radiations of the light from the sun, the moon, the planetary spheres, and the stars, so that the air and the moisture in the air is penetrated by all those cosmic forces.
And that's part of the growth of the cycle of the rice.
When that water congeals on the awns,
Yeah.
those forces are transmitted directly into the plant,
Oh, yeah.
and I would say directly to the grain of rice that is in the process of development.
Yeah.
From here on, these flowers that have opened and then closed and that are striving outward, during this stage they will beginning to receive the forces of the cosmos, and also the male and female parts of the plant are uniting into the insemination of the ovary, and the grain will develop out of that process. So right now we're witnessing really the preparation for and really the birth of a whole new generation of rice.
Right.
So every year the plant goes through this cycle. This is about the creation of a new crop of rice for next year.
Right. So when will they be ready to harvest, Christian, at this point, or do you have
At this point, it's now it's now July 27th.
Mhm.
So in about 6 weeks,
Mhm.
we'll be ready to harvest this.
Mhm.
And in 6 weeks, each of these green flowers will have ripened.
Mhm.
Within each of those flowers, a grain will have formed. At first, it's in the so-called milk stage, where if you were
Right.
to open it up, it would be just like a little drop of liquid milk.
Mhm.
And that little drop of liquid milk, you might say it's something like the caterpillar in its going through its metamorphosis. It's in a state of chaos, but penetrated by the cosmic order of the universe, that chaos develops into the individual grain of rice in each flower, that will become the future life of the plant.
Right. So they've reached full maturity in 6 weeks or beyond that?
In 6 weeks, if we can base our
Right, based
our
on
thoughts based on experience of what's
Exactly.
happened in the past,
Yeah.
in 6 weeks, each of these flowers will have filled out with grain. The weight of the grain will start to appear in the gesture of the plant. Right now, the gesture of the plant is reaching upward, and it's still going to mount higher.
Mm-hmm.
But once the grains start to form, it's going to, just by the forces of gravity,
Yeah.
the
Bends over.
plant, this upright vertical stem is going to start bending,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll see the rice start bowing to the earth.
Right.
Right now it's reaching to the sky, but in a few weeks it's going to start bowing to the earth.
So it's reaching to the sky to receive energy and then bowing to give the grain back to the earth? Is
That's
that
right.
the way you see it? Yeah.
You got it. That's it.
Yeah.
It's very important to take in the poetic, aesthetic nature of this process.
Yes.
We can understand it from scientific perspective, but the human soul is nourished and is fed by these more poetic imaginations or pictures
Mm-hmm.
of what is happening, because we can relate to that.
Yeah, we can.
Because in our own gesture as human beings, we come out of the cosmos. We
Mhm.
come from the infinite universe.
Mm-hmm.
And we strive towards the infinite universe.
Yes.
But we bow to the earth, out of which our bodies and all our relations have come. Like the Native American prayer, Tunkashila Wakantanka, Grandfather, Great Mystery. All the living things on earth you have created.
Right.
In the Christian tradition, in the beginning was the Word, and all things came through the Word. This is the truth. And it's not a scientific truth, although science can quantify it
Sure.
in whatever way it may attempt. For us, it's a spiritual reality. And as human beings, we can relate to what the rice is going through
Yeah.
our own process of growth.
And then at the end of our cycle, we go back to the earth too, don't we?
At the end of our cycle, our bodies go back to the earth.
Yes.
At the end of the cycle of the rice, the body of the plant will nourish the earth.
Mm-hmm.
It will become just like the grass here, the dead grass lying on the ground here.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a stalk that was cut by
Oh.
mistake.
Yeah.
So this is dead now.
Yeah.
Look at the comparison.
Yeah.
This is empty and dead.
Right.
These are alive and creating,
Mm-hmm.
full of life. And these stalks that are full of life, they will generate the seeds for the next incarnation of the rice. And likewise for us, we too, through our lives,
Yeah.
we develop a kind of seed. That seed is not visible,
No.
but that seed, the true essence of our nature, goes through a similar process and reincarnates
Yes.
into a new bodies, new forms, and a new life.
So how much of the seed do you have to save for next year? Is that a quantity or?
So, on any given stalk, there's a 125 to 150
Yeah.
seeds.
Mm-hmm.
It takes about it would take about 30 of these stalks
Okay.
to have enough seed to plant this whole paddy.
So that's how much you would save, true,
Yeah.
ordinarily.
So you can see right here, in this plant, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6. There's 6 of those heads. So, 5 plants.
Yeah.
Once they're all mature, 5 plants would be enough to.
There's real abundance here. There's enough
Yes.
to seed again, and then with what's left to feed people.
So what's left is nourishment for us as human beings.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the other creatures on Earth also like rice.
The sparrows.
There's the cardinal and
Cardinal.
the English sparrow,
Uh-huh.
and other birds.
Enough for everybody.
So not every seed, of course, becomes a new plant,
Okay.
because nature not only looks out for the regeneration of each plant, but it feeds and nourishes the other creatures, including ourselves.
So you will begin harvest probably sometime in mid-September? Is that kind of when it starts? Or
Well, I think last year, was it September 7th or September 9th?
Yeah,
Around then.
right,
It's now July 27th. This year we were a little late in getting started
right,
because of the early cold spell.
yes.
This rice, as you remember, started in March,
Mm-hmm,
when we soaked the seed in the very cold water of the stream,
mm-hmm.
giving it the signal that it was coming into
Into New
a
England,
challenging, cold New England climate.
yes.
But this is a very special time to be here with the rice, to witness. And that's a lot of what we as human beings can do for our relatives in nature. We bear witness to what is happening. And that's an important role that we can play in life.
Yeah,
And learning these things, I say these things kind of matter-of-factly, but these understandings are the result of long years of misunderstanding and confusion and misconceptions in order to arrive at the simple value and appreciation of what is happening.
yes. Yeah, it's been, what did you say, 30 years or more since you started growing rice? Is that right?
And we're approaching now 40 years.
40 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah, marvelous. Well, it's such a treat to be here and to see where we're at and to know that there's more to come.
And I want to say, and this may seem like a strange thing, but the rice appreciates our presence, appreciates the fact that we are valuing its life and appreciating its biography.
Mm-hmm.
And that means a lot to the being of the rice. The being of the rice is not the physical plant. We eat rice and we have rice in the bowl, so that's a grain of rice. We have the seed. Here we have the plant. But none of those different stages in the plant can we say that this is rice. We can't say, well, this is rice, because it's in a continuous process of transformation and development. We can say in the seed that is when we are closest to being able to say, well, this is the rice, because everything is contained in that seed. We take that seed and plant it, and this will come out of that seed.
It seems like you've had many spiritual insights over the years as a part of your experience growing rice. I wonder if you would recommend growing rice to our friends who might be seeing this tape. And if so, I mean, even in a small way, I know that some people have just put some rice seed in a bucket or something in their home and got to experience the growth and perhaps some of the spiritual insight that comes from being around the rice, would you say?
Well, there is over here some rice growing in a bucket.
Oh, yeah. Why don't we show that to folks? Marching through Christian's wonderful gardens here, which are in full bloom and wonderful to watch. Okay.
Maybe from here you can see it, and I'll go in there and show you more.
Oh, yeah. Look at this beautiful pond. Wish everybody could be here. Oh, yeah.
Can you see this, Mark?
I'm coming over. Yeah. So this was just some rice seed that you planted in this bucket.
Two seeds of rice.
You did that this year?
Did this year. It's planted in a 5-gallon bucket.
5-gallon bucket. And what do you do then? You keep it lubricated,
just keep it
water.
moist.
Yeah.
You can see I usually put more water in here, so I have to add some more water.
Yeah.
But you see, this is the stems are fattening here. This rice is not as advanced as the rice in the paddy.
Yeah.
But very soon, for instance, from this fat stem here, those same, not identical, obviously, but the similar process is happening here, and the flower stalks will emerge here.
Mm-hmm.
So this could be on a terrace or a deck in the middle of Manhattan.
That's right.
The important thing is that the rice have sunlight, lots of sunlight, which it loves, and that it be kept moist. Otherwise, you can grow it in a bucket like this, and this is not a question of quantity.
No.
Watch your step.
I'm gonna. Oh, yeah.
What we're talking about here in terms of making a connection with the plants and with the life process, it's not a question of quantity and growing acres of one thing or another.
No.
That will come in time. Right now, the important thing for us to do is connect with the plant, which is really connecting with our own life forces.
So is that something?
Connecting with the plant connects us with our own life forces.
Right. So just sitting quietly with the rice on a regular basis. Sitting quietly with the rice, is that a good thing
Sitting
to
quiet
do?
and just observing, being with, bearing witness to.
Yeah.
You create a relationship with the plant, and you can be amazed and surprised at how this affects the experience of eating the food, eating the rice. You start eating the rice and you say, oh, I know where this comes from. I know the story behind this grain of rice. I've seen it grow, I've watched it grow with love and devotion. That nourishes, it's like a nourishing cycle.
Yes.
A nourishing return between the outer nature and our own inner being. We enter into a realm of exchange with life in reality, not in an abstraction.
That sounds like a good thing for anybody.
It's a healing.
Yes.
It's a healing power and force.
Yeah. So
And here, I love putting the rice here in the midst of this
Yeah.
beautiful
oh my gosh,
flowering plant.
it's gorgeous here.
The plant world is magnificent, and it teaches us so much.
Yeah.
Because the plants are just pure reflections
hmm
of the natural forces, the forces of nature. They're not in opposition to or in doubt. They don't have any of the baggage that we as human beings have to work through
hmm
in order to reach our true humanity.
Well,
They're
that's-
just pure reflections.
Yeah.
They follow the pure natural laws of growth. And to behold that and to bear witness to that is a privilege and an opportunity for our
Yeah.
own future.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well said. So, before we finish this section of our video, did you want to show us a little bit of some of the other grains you're growing around, just
Well,
while
up
we're
here,
here?
for instance,
Yep.
this is foxtail millet.
hmm
Now, this millet, this is a beautiful plant. This millet, you can see, it hasn't come into the flowering stage yet.
No.
It's all leaf and stem, and it.
So is this millet like we would eat usually, or is it a little different?
The millet that we usually find in the natural food stores is a proso millet, and grows on a different type of plant.
Okay.
This one is a foxtail millet, originates from China, and this particular variety is called Golden Temple.
Oh, nice.
And it's called foxtail because when the stem emerges, it has a beautiful form of the grain head, which looks like a fox's tail.
hmm
And so it's called foxtail millet.
Now you have some other millet down
There's
below, is
another
that right?
millet here.
Oh, even here, up here.
And you see here,
Oh yeah, look
the
at that.
flowering stalk is just emerging.
Yeah.
Here in this stem,
Yeah.
it's just coming out of the leaf.
Yeah.
Here, it's more advanced. This is called pearl millet.
Pearl millet.
It has a larger seed than what we're accustomed to in the natural foods, what's available in natural food stores.
Yeah.
But the pearl millet is a food common to peoples in Africa.
hmm
So it's nice to bring these different grains from different places and different peoples together in one place. They get to, you could say, to see them side by side and to start to bring them into relationship, which that again is something that the human being can do.
Yeah. Yeah, there's an energy around here because of what you've created that is very peaceful, I would say, and probably reflects what you've been describing.
Well, it's the peace has a lot to do with the plants.
hmm hmm
The peace that the plants bring to an environment. And when in the ancient times, let's imagine that we were part of a village or a community somewhere in China or Asia. We would have looked out onto the rice field. Here we just have a very small section here.
Yeah.
But when we looked out on the rice field, or let's say we had been Native Americans and we looked out into the cornfield, we and our children and our parents had planted those fields, and now we see them coming to ripen.
Yeah.
We know that the nourishment for us as human beings to go through the winter and into the
hmm
future time
hmm
is there in that field.
Yeah.
And that would bring to us a great deal of sense of security and peace.
You bet.
And that's why often the grains were called the mother
Yes.
So the mother corn, for instance, the Native Americans referred.
Speaking of which, did you want to show us your corn and rye
Let's
down
see the
below?
corn.
Yeah. While we're having this wonderful visit. Really a panoramic valley
You can
here.
see already from up here, you can see the corn.
Yeah. 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 We're following a little pathway down here. Because your farm is, what, 120 acres? Is that right?
Yes.
So and some of it's farmed by other people. Oh yeah, there it is.
So there's a patch of corn.
Yeah.
Now that's just a small patch, and you know the United States grows more corn than anything else.
Yeah.
But that patch was planted out from one single and quite shriveled ear of corn
No kidding. That's
that a
amazing.
friend gave me last year. And this particular corn we planted on May 31st.
Yeah.
That was, it's now July 20. So that was 2 months ago. June, July, almost 2 months ago, not quite.
Yeah.
When I came home from a little trip in July 4th, the corn was almost knee-high.
Yeah.
The tallest stalks now in that patch are over 9.5 feet tall. That means taller than I can reach.
All from one ear of corn.
And all that patch is from one ear of corn. And so the reason I wanted to plant it out, I wanted to see what would become of it.